Did you know there are things that can disqualify you for up to 95% of jobs in the military? I was a recruiter of the Marine Corps and I've seen all of them, but today I'm going to talk about the 4 that disqualify you from the most stuff, which you probably have no idea about. Now I'm going to lead this right out the gate with what I would consider to be the absolute worst thing you can have just pop up and not know about, and you may not even know you have this issue until you go to MEPS. For reference, I have a friend, his name is Josh. He ended up ultimately joining the Marine Corps. He was an incredibly and exceptionally qualified applicant, stud wrestler, athletic, smart, college student, came in one day to join the Marine Corps. He and I were essentially friends. We were like the same age. He's like 1 or 2 years younger than me. I'm friends with his older brother. I know him. And comes in, get him ready to go, goes to MEPS. We do the whole thing. He aces the ASVAB. On paper, he is qualified for like every job in the Marine Corps, which ultimately the Marine Corps doesn't really do job selection before MEPS for this very reason, because there are a few sneaky things that we may find out at MEPS that can hinder what jobs you're eligible for. And I've got a whole video coming out on the MEPS process and the difference between Army and Marine Corps recruiters and that job selection thing. So go check that out if you want more information on that specifically. But Josh goes to MEPS, and at MEPS, he discovers that he's colorblind. I can't actually remember if he knew ahead of time whether he was colorblind. He may have. I've had applicants who went to MEPS and didn't know they were colorblind, failed the color vision test, come back, take it again, failed again. It is what it is. I probably had 4 or 5 people while I was a recruiter who had the color vision issue. He was one of them. I can't remember if he knew about it ahead of time. Honestly, it doesn't matter. There is no other like single issue that disqualifies you for more jobs in the military than being colorblind. For reference, here are the jobs that are open for color vision. Basically, you've got embark, which is like logistics, infantry, administrative jobs such as like HR or employee relations, whatever. That could be like the finance section, I'm sure. Computer jobs such as like maintenance, software programming. There are some military intelligence side like signals intelligence or linguist, but not all the intel jobs. Military police, public relations like PAO, media, whatever, but like the news, like the relations side. A cook, which I did a video on that recently. It's not as bad as people think. Mechanic. Aviation ops, which is like basically kind of manning the airfield and telling people which direction to go or whatever. And then the band, if you are very musically talented, but most people are not anywhere near good enough to get in the band. Fun fact, it's incredibly hard to get in the Marine Corps band. I think we had 1 person pass an audition in the 3 years I was a recruiter. And religious services, which is like the Navy, if you're an RP. I think the Navy, maybe the Army, the Marine Corps doesn't have religious personnel. We use the Navies, but those persons, those like 12 occupational like fields are pretty much it. You can't do motor T like driving. Obviously, you can't be a pilot. You can't do anything with like wires, right? Like you can't be a wire dog or an electrician. You can't this limits, like I kid you not, like 95% of jobs just gone because of color vision, which is really a tough pill to swallow when you're in the application process, especially if you didn't know you were colorblind. This was very tough for Josh. I mean, it was even to this date, like he served, he did his 4 years, he's glad he did, but he ended up in a job he didn't love, and then he ended up in a unit he didn't love because there's only so many units for that job, and it was unfortunate. And there's just nothing you can do, which is why, like, when the Army sells you on a job before you go to MEPS, I'm always really skeptical, because things like this come up, and then, well, now you're deputed into the Army when really you were just going for this job you were guaranteed, where the Marine Corps might not have guaranteed you a job, and now you're kind of stuck. So, like I said, there's a whole video on that process, so I'm not going to, like, dig into it right now, but just know that color vision really, really, really limits job options, and there's just nothing we can do about it. So if you know you're colorblind, and there's still a chance you pass the test. I had someone who was colorblind pass the test at MEPS, and then they were good. They were colorblind, not actually colorblind apparently. So, but you may have perfect vision and not know you're colorblind per our standard, and then it is what it is. Hey guys, it's your sponsor, Hooded Dave, and today we're going to talk about my book, which if you haven't done so already, you can download for free using either this QR code or the link down below in the description, called The No BS Guide to Military Life, How to Build Wealth, Get Promoted, and Achieve Greatness. And this is everything that I wish I'd known about the military and financial freedom using our benefits while I was serving in the military. These are all the things that I wish someone had told me and sat me down and told me when I joined, so I could plan out my time in the service, set myself up for success. So I'm paying it forward. Yeah, you can go buy the book on Amazon, or you can go download it on Audible and listen to where I actually narrated it. But the QR code and the link down below will take you where you can download a PDF version of it for absolutely free, because I'm not here to make money off you reading my book. I'm here to spread the good word of military is great, financial freedom's great, you're great, have a freaking great day. Back to normal days. The second thing is kind of in that similar realm. It's depth perception. We will also do a depth perception test. And if you fail the depth perception, which we always joked in the office means people would be like, well, what if I have depth perception issues? And I'd be like, well, do you know? And they're like, well, I don't really know. And then I throw something at them. Like we had these little Marine Corps, tiny little footballs, stress ball football things. And I toss it to them. And if they caught it, I'd be like, see, good depth perception. And if they missed it, I'd be like, ooh, I don't know. I would just with them. But at the end of the day, if you actually fail the depth perception test, which is much fewer people, as I recall, than the colorblind, then you can't do certain jobs like heavy equipment. Like you're not going to be able to drive a forklift. You can't drive a truck. You're not going to be able to drive. We're not going to put you in a 60,000 pound, 40,000 pound, 100,000 pound truck and be like, we know you can't tell how far you are from the vehicle in front of you, but good luck. Sorry. So there are some depth perception related jobs, but it is a far larger amount of jobs that you're qualified for with depth perception issues than it is with color vision issues. Here's a fun one that not a lot of people realize: height. You can get disqualified on certain jobs based on your height. So I'm going to just check. I took notes and everything. The height requirements for the service in general, the minimum is 56 inches, which is 4'8", and the high end is 82 inches, which is I think 6'10", right? So 4'8" to 6'10", eligible for the service. Different services have different edges to that. So the Marine Corps is 4'8" to 6'10" is kind of like most branches, but most branches cut off at 4'10". Only a few go to 4'8", and some of them cut off at 6'8" instead of 6'10". So you may actually be limited to specific branches of service based on your height if you're 6'9" or 4'9" rather than the 4'10" or 6'8". But that's a small section of the population, so I'm not going to worry about it too much going into the details. You can Google it. That being said, there are specific jobs that require height. So for example, in the Marine Corps, Motor T, or 88 Mike in the Army, my job in the Marine Corps, you had to be between 64 and 75 inches, which is 5'4" and 6'3". Because if you're 6'10", you might be eligible for the service, but if we cramp you in a Humvee, you're gonna be driving the old Asian lady like this with your Kevlar smashed up against the hood, and then when you hit an ID, you're gonna break your neck and die. And if you're 4'8", you're gonna be trying to drive a military truck like this, and it's gonna look not ideal. We don't want this or this where you can't even touch the pedals, driving 100,000 pound and $100,000 trucks, $500,000 trucks around in the desert. Not ideal. Another one that people know is pilots. For example, you have to fit in the cockpit to be a pilot. That makes sense to most people, but fighter cockpits are not built for the broad-shouldered, chunky dudes like me. It's built for the lean and mean, 5'10", aerodynamic, cross-country looking motherfucker. So Air Force actually changed this up recently. So previously, the Air Force's requirement was between 64 inches or 5'4" and 77 inches or 6'5". And then you also had to have a sitting height. So from, my butt right now to where I'm sitting, between 34 and 40 inches, right? So basically around a yard. If you were too much shorter, you wouldn't really be able to see out the cockpit. If you're too much taller, same issue, your head is sandwiched against the ceiling. Not ideal. Now, that being said, the Air Force now uses it's called an anthropometric screening process to assess candidates based on their physical attributes for specific aircraft they may fly. This means that the Air Force considers a wider range of factors beyond just height, including your reach, your leg length, and other body measurements. So shoulder width, your length of arms, your length of feet, all of that kind of goes into this hodgepodge. But suffice it to say, if you're way outside the spectrum on height, one way or the other, that could be very limiting to being in a cockpit. And most of this is stuff that you're going to get to find out really quickly if you're in the pilot program or going to be in the pilot program. The Motor T side or the truck driver side, is more realistic for a lot of people. And I actually didn't check. I don't know for sure. The heavy equipment side, like the, bulldozers and forklifts and stuff, they may also have a height requirement, but these were the two that I know for a fact do and was able to like look up. So just know if you're super far on the short side or super far on the tall side, it might limit you on a couple jobs, especially the pilot side. It is what it is. Like there's not a whole lot we can do besides like breaking your kneecaps or that miserable heightening surgery that, I would imagine probably disqualifies you from service anyway because of the recovery period and your bones and all that other stuff. So not worth it. Okay. And then another very large one is security clearance concerns. And when I say security clearance concerns, basically anything that would keep you from getting a clearance in the service. So for those who don't know, basically everyone gets a secret clearance when they join the military. And then from there, you've got top secret, which is, the level above, which I had. And then you also got TSSCI, or top secret special compartmentalized information, which I had at my last command because I was in a skiff. And then above that, you've got, Yankee White, which is like the guarding the president. And then there's probably a few in there. Anyway, you've got different levels to the clearance. And like basic security clearance, they just ask you like basic background stuff, legal issues, parents' information, record, home of record, jobs you've had. Like you have to fill out a whole thing. It's called an SF-86. You fill out this long ass thing and it will talk through, ask you a million questions and it'll basically just, you put it into a system and it'll populate yay or nay for basic security clearance. It's a lot of information, but it's really not that intense. Once you get into the top secret and the TSSCI, that's where they start like interviewing people for some of this stuff. And once you get to like the Yankee White, they interview like everybody. And that's like a 6 month to a year process, really pain in the butt thing. All that being said, there are a few things that can just disqualify you from the security clearance needed for jobs. So for example, like you can't get into intelligence communities if you can't get a security clearance. Military police, special forces, pilot, attorney, like there's just a decent number of jobs that are limited by clearance. It's not a ton, but it's more of the like intellectual or it's the things that require clearance, right? So the main disqualifiers for this are legal and drug waivers. So if you were like a drug waiver past a certain amount, meaning you had like major issues. Legal, so like if you have like DUI, minor in possession, if you had a felony and got that waiver approved, which is quite the feat. We had one person with that approved in the 3 years I was a recruiter. So those types of things can be disqualifying or are, depending on the level. And you'll know if you get a waiver for that and it disqualifies you from a clearance. Another one that is not usually found in the recruiting process, but could potentially down the road is financial stress. So essentially, like if you're in a really, really bad spot with credit, debt, your finances in general, to where they believe it's so bad that you would be a target for like a company or somebody paying you for information and you would fall for it because your finances are that bad, that can actually be detrimental to your clearance. People think like buying a house and having mortgage debt will get rid of your clearance. No, I had a TSSCI when I had quite a significant amount of mortgage debt and rentals and real estate. It's the kind of things where you're like, $100,000 in credit card debt, you're missing payments every month, you're in default. Like it's bad stuff, not like, I have 3 houses and my tenants pay the mortgage, but I'm great. And then another one on there is citizenship. So you can join the military with a green card, but you cannot have that clearance without citizenship. Now you can get citizenship while you're in the service after, I think it's 2 years, but after a certain time period, and then you can go and apply for that clearance and then you can lateral move into these jobs, but you can't just right off the bat get into like an intel job if you're coming in from God knows where and you have a green card because you're not a citizen. Like there's just certain things that come with that. Like you can't vote, you don't get the secret clearance. It is what it is. So there we go. We got color vision, depth perception, height, which, we can all change, and the security clearance. Those are the 4 things that disqualify people the most from job selection. Doesn't mean you're disqualified from the service by any means, but it means that you may be limited on some of those jobs. So if you're aware of some of this stuff going forward and you're thinking through what careers you want, just be a little bit more flexible. On the Marine Corps side, we always sold people on being a Marine, and selling a job was secondary. On some of the branches, they still, like the Army, they sell your job. And then, they could care less whether you want to be a soldier. They're like, great, he wants to be a soldier, but he really wants to do this specific job. The Navy sells jobs a lot too, especially like the nuke program, the submarine program, the SEAL program, the pilot program, the Air Force, obviously the pilot program. But just know, you can join the military and still be disqualified from some jobs. So if you know about these issues, just have that in your head and just be thinking through what occupations you do qualify for that you'd love, because serving the military is ultimately still worth it. Even the gentleman who did not have a great experience and had to choose a job he didn't want, which is a bummer, still glad and proud that he served the Marine Corps. We still grab a beer together on Marine Corps birthdays, and it is what it is. So hope you got something out of this video. Love you guys. Have a great day.